Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll be brief. Mr. Mooney, you did miss earlier. I did ask them on record before the rule was issued in 2008 if the Bush administration had solicited any of them, and they had not. So that actually, some have said that this administration's been more inclusive than that, and I just wanted that on the record. I'm not saying it's right or wrong for either administration, but wanted that documented. I'd also like to, Mr. Chairman, put in the record there was reference to a Yale health study, which is actually not a Yale health study. It was done by a professor, Dr. Jonathan Borak, who teaches in the public health department there, but it was paid for by the National Mining Association, and asked if it was a Yale study, said no, because he would have had to have undergone a very complicated grant application process. So I do want to, if that's all right with you, we'll put that into the record so we have exactly that. Then, Mr. Hunter, I'd like to ask you just a couple questions. There is a concern in some mountaintop communities that state regulators have been, in essence, captured by the industries they regulate. One of the ways this happens is when mining companies see violations imposed by the agency as a cost of doing business, rather than an incentive to avoid collecting notices of violation. Do you think the West Virginia DEP has sufficient incentives in place to defer repeat offenders?
I believe the West Virginia DEP has in place an effective regulatory program, yes.
So let me ask you, how long has Keystone Development Number 2 been in operation?
The most recent Keystone permit, I think, has only been in operation less than a year.
May 2014 is what I saw. But in that time, do you know how many violations have been accumulated?
No, Congressman.
So I'm going to put them in the record. Over 20 violations and 3 cessation of work orders. So would it seem to you like maybe the coal business sort of regards these violations as the cost of doing business?
I don't have an opinion on that, really.
Okay, so may I put that in the record, Mr. Chair?
Without objection.
And then let me just ask, I've got 2 minutes. So Mr. White, let me ask you a question. What do you see in your community and communities like yours when mountaintop removal companies abandon the mine, take an abandoned mine but reclaim it? What does the reclamation look like? Has the mountaintop been restored? What about the vegetation? Talk about what really happens.
Well, to be honest, Congresswoman, you cannot put something back that God created the way He created it. And it is essentially a lifeless landscape now, not up to Appalachian forest standards, I should add. It may be considered full of life for a Midwest prairie, but not for an Appalachian forest. They're basically just open expanses of nothingness. And often a rebuttal from the mining industry is that they will use this land for economic diversification or economic processes that just aren't existing. And when you've got MTR sites like the Hobet 21 mine site that's large enough to fit 75% of the city of Manhattan in, and it's just sitting there vacant, they obviously have no use anymore, not naturally, not for economic development.
Thank you, Mr. White. I'll yield back the balance.